You just walked into a trap.
Glenn paused at the kitchen threshold, mug in hand, watching Melanie admire a strange new plant basking in the morning sun. Its dark, glossy leaves glistened unnaturally. "Isn't it stunning?" she said, eyes lit up. "It only blooms once every few years, supposedly breathtaking when it does." He forced a smile. The smell was sweet, almost sickly, with a foul undertone. Still, she was excited, and after a year packed with promotions, launching her design studio, and finally enrolling the twins in private school, Glenn didn't want to rain on her moment. "What's it called?" "Belladonna Nocturne. Beautiful lady of the night." Sounds exotic, right? The woman at the shop said it's great for bedrooms. It gives off oxygen at night. That triggered Glenn's instincts. Most plants don't. He squinted at the thick roots and odd potting soil. "Where'd you buy it?" "Galloway Botanical, north of town. Owner's name was Aurora. Said it's rare, low maintenance." A text from Wes, Glenn's business partner and longtime friend, popped up. "Lunch today? Morrison site's a mess." "I gotta run," Glenn told her. "Emma's cleats in the garage, right?" Melanie nodded, already distracted. Glenn snapped a photo of the plant and sent it to Wes on his way out, but he couldn't shake the unease. Melanie's story was vague, unlike her. Something was off. At 11:30, Wes called. "Where are you?" "Office." "Stay there. I'm on my way." 10 minutes later, Wes burst in, pale and shaken. He slammed Glenn's phone down. "That plant. It's not Belladonna Nocturne. I think it's Sommelentia mortis. Widow's lure. Banned for decades." Glenn blinked. "What?" "It's toxic. Releases pleasant-smelling chemicals that build up in your system. Causes organ failure. Looks like a natural death." "You're telling me someone planted poison in our bedroom?" "Exactly. And it needs regular dosing to stay lethal. Either Melanie's been duped, or someone's coming in when you're not home." Glenn's gut turned to ice. "I need to call her. Get her and the kids out." Wes grabbed his arm. "Wait, if they're watching, tipping them off could make things worse. We need to be smart." Everything clicked. This wasn't random. Someone knew their habits, their home. Someone wanted them dead without leaving a trace. "I'm finding this Aurora Galloway," Glenn said, voice low. "If she exists." "I'll dig into rare plant trafficking," Wes replied. "But Glenn, we can't show our hand." Glenn's thoughts darted to Emma and Ethan. He clenched his jaw. "They picked the wrong family. I've dealt with worse in the Army. I don't fold." Wes stared. This was a side of Glenn he hadn't seen. Steady, controlled, dangerous. "What's the plan?" "First, I disable that plant. Quietly." That night, under the guise of dinner, Wes came over. Once Melanie was helping Emma with homework, the men inspected the plant. "This is engineered," Wes whispered. "Custom pot, airflow controls, chemical additives." Glenn crouched. "Those white crystals?" "Not fertilizer, toxin boosters. You've got maybe 3 weeks. Then I'm setting up surveillance. If someone's coming in, we'll catch them." "You telling Melanie?" "Not yet. She can't fake calm. If they're watching, we need to act like nothing's wrong." Dinner was normal. Smiles, soccer updates, school talk. But Glenn's mind was racing, tracking every guest who'd ever been in their house. Later, alone in his office, he dug deeper. Property records showed Aurora Galloway had bought the plant shop 6 months ago. But the real Aurora had died in a crash 2 years prior. Someone faked her identity, and not well enough to fool Glenn. More digging led him to Riverside Financial, the same company behind their home and school loans. 3 accounts were tied to one name, Mitchell Walker. Glenn knew that name. Walker had worked for a corrupt construction firm Glenn and Wes had exposed in court. Their testimony had bankrupted the company. Walker, its finance lead, vanished afterward. Glenn printed everything: emails, court records, financial trails. Revenge, clear as day. A text from Wes lit up his phone. Plant linked to a shut-down biolab in Mexico. 2 lies toxins, serious players. Glenn replied, "Meet me, 6 a.m. coffee shop on 5th, bring it all." Then, quietly, he installed hidden cameras in the bedroom. Equipment from an old security gig. Perfectly concealed. Now he watched. Lying in bed, he stared at the ceiling. Melanie slept soundly beside him. A few feet away, the butcher plant exhaled its invisible poison. But Glenn didn't feel fear. He felt locked in, focused, tactical. Whoever thought he was just a suburban dad? They were about to learn the hard way how wrong they were. At exactly 2:03 a.m., Glenn's surveillance monitor lit up. A shadowy figure slipped through the back door. No damage, no sound. She was small, masked, gloved, and moved like she knew the layout. Within minutes, she was in the bedroom, tending to the plant with practiced hands. Then she vanished. By sunrise, after Melanie and the kids were gone, Glenn checked the door. No forced entry. Whoever she was, she had a key. The plant looked even healthier now with more of those white crystals. This wasn't passive poisoning. It was being actively managed. Then his phone rang. Wes. "Get out, now!" Wes blurted. "The CDC's coming. My source says someone tipped them off. If they find that thing, your family's getting quarantined, maybe worse." "Walker?" Glenn asked, already knowing. "Yep, he's claiming you smuggled it in. Says you're staging an illness to commit insurance fraud." "How long?" "Less than an hour." Glenn's jaw clenched. "No more playing defense. Get over here with everything we've got." With the clock ticking, Glenn moved fast, bagging soil samples, printing documents, backing up footage. He laid it all out. Videos, enhancer compounds, property records, financial links tying Walker to Riverside Financial and back to the disgraced construction firm. A text popped up from an unknown number. CDC ETA. 45 minutes, be ready. Glenn typed back without hesitation. Family evacuated. We're ready to cooperate. A lie, but useful. Let Walker believe his setup was unfolding perfectly. Minutes later, Wes arrived, briefcase in hand. "Tell me you've got a plan." Glenn unrolled the house's floor plan. "They'll check the plant, see tampering, but unless they catch someone red-handed, it's inconclusive." "You planted evidence?" "Better. We swapped the toxins for harmless nutrients. Real stuff sealed and hidden. If Walker sends someone to reinforce the setup before the feds get here, we catch them in the act." "You think he'll risk that?" "He has to. If the CDC doesn't find anything dangerous, the whole story collapses." Wes scanned the digital paper trail Glenn had compiled, financial links, property deeds, and employee records. "This is solid," Wes said. "It has to be. We're not just defending ourselves, we're exposing everything." At 11 a.m. sharp, 2 black SUVs pulled up. Through the blinds, Glenn watched as CDC agents in hazmat suits stepped out, trailed by 2 plainclothes men who were clearly FBI. He opened the door calmly. "Mr. Coleman, Dr. Sarah Chun, CDC. We've been alerted to a biological hazard on your property." "Glad you're here," Glenn replied. "We discovered the issue yesterday." "We?" "My business partner, Wes. He's an environmental engineer. Recognized the plant from a photo." In the bedroom, Dr. Chun's expression shifted the moment she saw it. "How long has it been here?" 3 days. My wife bought it from a place called Galloway Botanical." An FBI agent stepped forward. "Agent Rodriguez, we'll need a full account of how it got here." "You'll get it," Glenn said, leading them to his office. "But first, this." He opened a file on his laptop. 3 years ago, my firm helped expose a fraudulent construction project. Their finance manager? Mitchell Walker. 6 months ago, he reappeared as our financial advisor. 3 days ago, my wife unknowingly brought home this plant from a shop registered to someone impersonating Aurora Galloway. The real Aurora died 2 years ago. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "You're saying this was intentional?" "I'm saying someone wants my family dead." Wes stepped in with lab reports. "The soil contains synthetic compounds. It has to be refreshed every few days. That means someone's been coming in." Just then, Glenn's phone buzzed, motion alert. "Agent Rodriguez," he said calmly. "Someone just entered through the back door." Minutes later, the agents returned with a woman in cuffs. Petite, gloved, masked. The same figure from the footage. She carried house keys and a bag of chemicals. "Caught her in the bedroom tampering with the plant," an agent said. Rodriguez turned to Glenn. "You predicted this? I counted on it." The woman was identified as Carrie Hahn, a former lab technician from a shut-down biotools lab in Mexico. Financial records tied her directly to Walker. Pressed for answers, she confessed. Walker hired her to keep the plant toxic and promised her protection. Now, Glenn had everything. Proof of the setup, the culprit caught mid-act, and a trail that led straight back to the man who started it all. It was a perfect trap. End Glenn's family slowly with a tainted plant, make it look like a tragic mistake, and pin it on him with fabricated evidence. Mitchell Walker had thought of everything, but Glenn beat him to the punch. By late afternoon, Walker was arrested at his office. Agents uncovered detailed plans on his laptop, blueprints, contingencies, even false reports blaming Glenn for illegally acquiring the plant. But the real story had flipped. As the agents prepared to leave, Glenn pulled Rodriguez aside. "Check his files. If he did this to us over an old lawsuit, he's probably done worse." Rodriguez did, and what they found was terrifying. 4 more families, all clients of Riverside Financial, had been targeted. 2 were already showing signs of toxic exposure. Walker's arrest had stopped something much bigger. That evening, Glenn sat on the porch as Emma and Ethan played in the yard. Melanie leaning into his side, still shaken. The plant was gone. The danger removed. "I can't believe all this started over a lawsuit," she murmured. "Some people can't move on," Glenn said, wrapping an arm around her. "But they picked the wrong family." She smiled faintly. "You're kind of terrifying when you're in problem-solving mode." He kissed her forehead. "Whatever it takes. For you. For them." Walker would rot in prison. The other families would heal. Glenn had done more than survive. He'd dismantled a butcher's plan with precision, patience, and sheer will. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't rage, it's being 3 steps ahead. 3 days later, life was settling. The CDC had cleared the house. Hahn had confessed. Walker was in federal custody. Then Wes called. "We've got a bigger problem." Glenn straightened. "How big?" "I traced the funding. Walker didn't bankroll the lab, the shop, or the chemicals. It all leads to a shell company. Name? Meridian Holdings, owned by Roland Booth." Glenn's blood ran cold. Booth was the ex-CEO of the construction firm they helped expose. Glenn's testimony had cost him everything and earned him prison time. When was he released? 6 months ago, right when this started. Walker had only been a pawn. Booth was the architect. Wes continued. "Booth's been buying properties under aliases, one near Melanie's office, another by the kids' school, and one near your gym." Glenn pulled up a map, marking the locations. "He's tracking us, studying our routines. That plant was just step 1. An hour later, Wes showed up with files and photos, utility records, surveillance, blueprints. "This warehouse near Riverside Academy has power usage off the charts. Lab grade. What's he running in there?" Glenn asked, already fearing the answer. Then his phone rang. "Mr. Coleman?" said Principal Stevens. "We had a visitor today asking about your kids' pickup times and school safety protocols. When we asked for ID, he left." Glenn's pulse surged. "Description?" "Gray hair, mid-50s, calm, knew too much." Booth. "Lock the school down. No one touches my kids but me or my wife. I'm on my way." At the school, security footage confirmed it. Booth had been inside, confident, calculated. He even looked into the camera. "He wanted to be seen," Glenn said. "He's baiting us." Just then, Glenn's phone buzzed with a new text. "Nice trap with Walker. Too bad he was disposable. Phase 2 starts tonight. Your children are beautiful when they sleep." Wes read it, face pale. "He's escalating." Glenn called Agent Rodriguez. 20 minutes later, the FBI arrived. Glenn laid it all out. Threats, property purchases, surveillance evidence. "We'll assign protection immediately," Rodriguez said. "Is there somewhere safe to go?" "My brother has a place off-grid in Wyoming, ex-military." Rodriguez nodded. "Might be wise," but Glenn wasn't planning to run. "Booth won't stop. He spent years planning this. If we disappear, he'll just wait." Rodriguez asked, "What do you suggest?" "He's playing psychological warfare, trying to control the narrative." Wes added, "He's choreographing the fear, forcing us to react." Rodriguez crossed his arms. "So what's your move?" Glenn stared at the map. "We let him think he's winning." "You're going to play along?" "He thinks I'm just an engineer. He's wrong. It's time to remind him." Rodriguez warned, "I can't authorize any retaliation." "You don't have to. Everything I do will be legal, but it'll hit him where it hurts." Glenn picked up the phone. "Chad, it's me. I need you in Denver tonight. Bring the gear." That evening, Chad Coleman walked into the house, duffel bag in hand, his expression sharp. "Someone's threatening my niece and nephew," he said, tossing the bag on the table with a cold smile. "Bad move." Glenn laid it all out. Walker's arrest, Booth's reappearance, and the sick mind games. Chad listened like a strategist, eyes scanning for patterns. "Booth slipped up," Chad said flatly. "He showed his hand too early. Now we control the board." Wes, skeptical as ever, leaned back. "Isn't escalation dangerous?" "Only if you're reactive," Chad said. "But if we switch to offense, we hunt," Glenn finished. Chad nodded and opened his bag, revealing a full suite of legal but lethal grade surveillance gear. Night vision, bugs, thermal drone, GPS trackers. "The plan?" Glenn asked. "We do to Booth what he did to you. Watch, learn, predict." For hours, they wired Glenn's home and charted Booth's movements. Chad deployed sensors across city blocks, invisible cams, and long-range mics that could hear a whisper across a parking lot. "The warehouse is priority 1, Chad said, tapping a satellite image. "Something's cooking there, literally. But we can't break in," Glenn noted. "No need," Chad grinned, launching the drone. "Thermal, chemical sensors, all legal from public airspace." While Chad piloted, Glenn broke down Booth's mindset. "He's not just angry. He wants to rewrite the story, make it look like we were the threat all along. Wes looked up from his laptop. So, frame us as villains. Justify everything. Exactly. Right then, Glenn's phone buzzed. You destroyed my life. Tomorrow the world sees who you really are. Chad read it. He's not warning you. He's prepping a narrative. Wes's laptop chimed. Movement at the warehouse, he said. Drone footage showed Booth's car next to a van. Multiple people unloaded strange gear. Chad switched to thermal. Hot machinery, high energy output. This is a chemical op. Glenn clenched his jaw. He's staging a setup, terrorism charges. They'll call the plant Phase 1, Wes added. This is Phase 2. They're on a tight clock, Chad said. This goes down tonight. Then we bait them, Glenn said. Wes raised an eyebrow. Bait them? How? We lure them here, Glenn said. Make Booth believe tonight is the perfect chance to plant fake evidence. He pulled out his phone. Agent Rodriguez, I think something's been planted in my basement. Chemical smell. Maybe Booth again. Can you send a team tonight? Wes stared. You just called the FBI on yourself? Glenn nodded. They'll search, find nothing. It goes on record. I'm clean. Meanwhile, Booth walks right into the trap. Chad smirked. He won't be able to resist. If he bites, Wes muttered. He will, Glenn said. This is his finale. By 11 p.m., the FBI swept Glenn's home. Rodriguez led the forensics team. Glenn stayed calm, helpful. Just want it documented, he told Rodriguez. If Booth tries again, we're covered. The search ended at 1 a.m. Nothing illegal. All clear. Just what they needed. Back in the office, Chad monitored the live feeds from surrounding streets. Now we wait. At 3:17 a.m., motion sensors triggered. 2 cars. Multiple people, Chad said, adjusting his screen. 8 figures in black emerged, hauling duffel bags and tools. One of them was Booth. They're staging it in real time, Glenn said. Chad zoomed in. They're building a lab setup outside. Glenn called Rodriguez. They're here. 8 intruders, 1 is Booth. They're planting materials. Rodriguez's voice crackled. We're moving. Stay put. Booth's crew worked with expert timing, half outside building a fake lab, the rest prepping the house. Chad tapped into audio. Booth's voice came through clearly. Smudge the prints. Timer components in the workshop. Make it look like it's been here for weeks. Glenn froze. Timers? Wes went pale. There's a major rally this weekend. He's framing you for domestic terrorism. Glenn's voice dropped. They'll call it a foiled plot. Booth walks out as the hero. Chad clenched his fists. This isn't revenge, it's rebranding. Rodriguez's voice returned. We're in position. Go, Glenn said. The takedown was swift. Agents swarmed from all sides, catching Booth and his team mid-plant. Cameras recorded everything. Booth giving orders, placing equipment, directing the frame job. You ruined me, Booth growled as Rodriguez cuffed him. I was just returning the favor. Glenn stood nearby, calm, visible to cameras. Good thing I reported the smell, he said. Rodriguez nodded. You didn't just save yourself, you stopped a national incident. The next few hours unraveled Booth's entire plot. Over $500,000 had been poured into the setup. Fake lab gear, explosives components, and false evidence. 6 months of planning, Rodriguez muttered, wiped out in one night. The brilliance was in the method. Glenn hadn't broken the law. Every step was clean, traceable, legal. Rodriguez turned to him. How'd you know when Booth would strike? Glenn gave a tired grin. Because if I were him, tonight would have been perfect. As FBI techs bagged evidence under floodlights, Glenn looked around the yard. Booth's mistake, he said. He treated this like a blueprint, but I'm an engineer. I know exactly how to break a system apart. Rodriguez gave a slow nod. Thanks to you, we've got everything we need to bury him. Glenn didn't smile. His mind was already a step ahead, because the end of one plan usually means the start of another, and somewhere out there, someone else had funded this. This war wasn't over yet. By morning, Booth was behind bars, but his arrest opened a much darker door. Rodriguez called early. Booth wasn't acting alone, he said. We found records, dozens of names, payments, and targets across 5 states. Your family was just one of many. Glenn sat in stunned silence. How many were attacked like us? 3 with the same plant method. 1 family in Phoenix didn't survive. Glenn closed his eyes, imagining another family dying quietly, unknowingly. And the funding? Rodriguez's tone hardened. Booth ran a revenge-for-hire ring. Rich clients, clean hands, and custom sabotage, his specialty. Wes, overhearing, shook his head. He turned vengeance into a business model. Rodriguez confirmed it. Detailed files. He logged every step. Anyone else targeting us? Rodriguez hesitated. 3 clients. Arnold Short, fired CFO from Hartwell Construction. Kari Mendoza, lost a malpractice case you testified in. And Stephen McIntyre. Glenn's stomach sank. McIntyre runs security at my kid's school. Rodriguez didn't blink. Exactly. He's had access to your children's schedules, health records, everything. Wes looked up from his laptop. McIntyre also lost big in that medical fraud case you blew open. He's got motive and access. Where is he? Glenn asked. Gone. His house is empty. He hasn't been to work in days. Glenn stood, unlocking his tool safe. I want armed protection on my family. Now. Rodriguez continued. We found emails. He was recruiting other parents at Riverside, offering booth services. Wes looked alarmed. This isn't personal anymore. It's a network. Just then, Glenn's phone buzzed. Your children look so peaceful when they sleep. Too bad you won't be around to protect them. He read it aloud. Rodriguez's voice snapped over the line. Status read, immediate threat, tactical units on a route. But Glenn wasn't waiting. McIntyre knows our systems. He's been planning this for months. If we react like victims, we lose. Rodriguez asked, Then what's your move? Glenn turned to Chad, who had already started prepping gear. We make ourselves the bait. You want to draw him out? He thinks we're vulnerable, so let's make it look that way. Wes frowned. You're risking everything. No, Glenn said. I'm controlling the battlefield. Just then, Rodriguez returned with a ping. McIntyre's convoy was picked up by a traffic cam near the school. 3 vehicles. That was all Glenn needed. Rodriguez, coordinate with Chad. Place tactical units for containment. Tonight, this ends. I can't authorize a confrontation, Rodriguez warned. You won't need to. We're protecting our home. Chad buckled his vest. Time to remind them why you don't target this family. McIntyre was closing in, and Glenn had a plan. But first, his family had to disappear. Chad, take Melanie and the kids to your ranch. Tonight. You're not coming? If I vanish, he might redirect. He wants me, so I stay. Inside, Wes monitored encrypted chatter. McIntyre's coordinating with 6 others. This is a coordinated hit, Rodriguez radioed in. Confirmed. They're ex-military contractors. One's a demolitions expert. Glenn's jaw tightened. Then we make them come to us. Outside, Chad packed the SUV. I don't like leaving you alone. I'm not. Rodriguez and his team will be here, so will Wes. Glenn hugged his kids tightly. Uncle Chad's taking you on a short trip. I'll join you soon. Emma looked up. Are you going to stop the bad guys? I will, Glenn promised, and they'll never hurt anyone again. Once they were gone, the house felt hollow, but Glenn knew better. It wasn't a home now. It was a trap. By 10 p.m., Rodriguez arrived with the briefing. 7 targets, all armed. 2 are ex-special forces. They're planning a fake home invasion between 2 and 4 a.m. Let them try, Glenn said. Every inch of the house had been fortified. Motion sensors, hidden cams, legal defenses, and evidence-capturing tools. This isn't preemptive, Glenn told Rodriguez. It's self-defense. At 1:47 a.m., the sensors lit up. Movement, Chad said, watching the feed. 7 inbound, military precision. They're in formation, Wes noted. Classic 2-team split. Rodriguez's voice came through. Hold your position, we're ready. Glenn tightened his armor and checked his tool. They made one fatal mistake. What's that? Wes asked. They saw me as prey. At 2:23 a.m., the attack began. McIntyre's team breached 3 entry points with military precision, but Glenn wasn't caught off guard. He guided them through the house like prey, leading them into a trap disguised as retreat. By the time McIntyre stormed the living room, tool raised, Glenn was already in position. You destroyed my life, McIntyre growled. Now I destroy yours. Glenn's voice didn't waver. You picked the wrong family. FBI agents burst in seconds later, surrounding the attackers. 10 seconds. No bullets flew. It was over. Rodriguez found Glenn calmly filming the aftermath. It's done? The agent asked. Glenn nodded. This chapter is? But we're not finished. Wesley walked in holding his laptop. Actually, we might be. I traced every client who paid Booth. He turned the screen around. Federal raids tonight seized enough evidence to implicate over 40 clients in 12 states. Rodriguez's eyes widened. This could be the biggest criminal conspiracy takedown in years. Glenn asked. How many families were targeted? Over 100, Wes replied. Because you held your ground, most of them never knew how close they came. Glenn thought of the family in Phoenix, the ones who didn't make it. That alone made the fight worth it. Rodriguez, every family on that list needs protection now. They're already being contacted, the agent said. We've got local units activated across the country. A text from Chad appeared on Glenn's phone. All clear. Kids want to know when you're coming back. Glenn exhaled. Tell them soon. It's finally over. As agents packed up the attackers, Glenn stood in the wreckage of his living room. Damaged walls, overturned furniture, scorched memories. But his family was safe, and the network that tried to destroy them was gone. Wes entered, holding a dusty bottle. You weren't kidding when you said you'd out-engineer them. Glenn cracked a tired smile. To every family sleeping peacefully tonight, even if they never know why. They raised a glass. Two engineers who turned strategy into survival. 3 months later, Glenn sat in a Denver courtroom as Stephen McIntyre was sentenced to life without parole. Survivors from across the country filled the gallery, families who'd once been in the crosshairs of Booth's revenge-for-hire ring. Rodriguez, now a close friend, sat behind Glenn as the judge delivered the final words. This was not revenge. It was terrorism. Life without parole is the only appropriate sentence. McIntyre was let out in shackles. Glenn didn't feel triumph, just relief. Afterward, a tearful mother approached. You saved my daughter's life. Thank you. Glenn shook her hand. You testified. You had courage. That's what stopped this. Dr. Williams, another survivor, asked, You going back to engineering? Glenn shook his head. Not exactly. Wes and I are starting a security firm for families who need protection and don't know where to turn. Rodriguez nodded. That's needed. You've seen what most never do. We're calling it Coleman Burton Personal Security, Glenn explained. Risk assessment, home defenses, law enforcement coordination. We stop threats before they escalate. Wes joined them, holding a tablet. We're also partnering with federal agencies, building tools to detect stalking and coordinated threats early. Dr. Williams smiled. You taking clients yet? Next month, Glenn said. First case is already lined up. A California judge receiving threats from old defendants. Just then, Glenn's phone rang. Chad. Emma caught a fish bigger than her leg. Ethan wants to be a cowboy, and Melanie says she's never leaving Wyoming. Glenn laughed genuinely. I'll be there tomorrow. McIntyre's locked up. The firm can wait. How'd it end? Life without parole. The whole ring's dismantled. They won't hurt anyone else again. The kids keep asking when they can come home. Glenn looked out at the city he helped protect. Tell them they can. It's safe now. That night, Glenn and Wes met Rodriguez and his team for drinks at a local bar. To the men who turned blueprints into battle plans, Rodriguez toasted. I've never seen civilians do what you two did. You didn't just survive, you dismantled an underground network. Glenn raised his glass. We just wanted to protect our families. Rodriguez shook his head. You did more than that. You rewrote the rules, Wes added, and Glenn never made it personal. Every move he made saved lives. Glenn said nothing. He didn't need to. The results spoke for themselves. Later, standing by the window, Glenn watched his kids playing in peace. No more threats. No more shadows. Still, he knew better than to let his guard down. Think this is really over? He asked Rodriguez. The agent sighed. Not forever. There's always someone with money and a grudge. But thanks to you, their jobs just got a lot harder. Glenn nodded. Then Coleman Burton is just getting started. 2 days later, Glenn stood on Chad's porch in Wyoming, taking in the sight of Emma and Ethan riding horses, while Melanie helped prepare dinner. It felt surreal, how normal things looked after everything they'd been through. Dad! Emma shouted from across the corral. Uncle Chad says we can visit any time. You sure can, Glenn called back. Ethan rode up and looked up at him seriously. Are the bad guys really gone forever? They are, son. The ones who tried to hurt us are behind bars for good. But there could be new ones? Glenn hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Maybe, but now we know how to protect ourselves, and we've got people watching our backs. Ethan grinned. And you're really good at catching bad guys with traps. Glenn chuckled. I am pretty good at that. That night, under a sky full of stars far from city lights, Glenn and Melanie walked through the pasture in quiet. Glenn, she said softly, I've been thinking. I'm proud of you. Not just for keeping us safe, but for the way you did it. You didn't run. You fought back and stopped them, for us, and for so many others. He pulled her into an embrace. I never doubted we'd make it, not because I'm fearless, but because failure just wasn't an option. She looked up at him. What do you mean? I mean, protecting you and the kids, that's not something I compromise on. If someone tries to take that from me, they better be ready to face everything I've got. She kissed him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt whole. Their family hadn't just survived, they'd grown stronger. As they headed back to the house, Glenn's phone buzzed. A message from their first client in California lit up the screen. The threats stopped completely. Your team gave me my life back, thank you. Glenn smiled and tucked the phone away. He'd deal with work tomorrow. Tonight he had everything he'd fought for right in front of him. Peace, safety, and the people he loved. The fight was behind them. The next chapter had begun,